Good morning, or afternoon, or evening, depending on whenever you're watching this video. Today we're going to be talking about a $10.6 million diet trick that one of my favorite athletes, Novak Djokovic, who is a top-ranked tennis player, did this past year, 2011, which allowed him to break through the top of the competition in men's tennis and really create a year that created history. So a little background, Djokovic had always hovered around number 3 or 4 in the world. He'd always been a competitor. I think he'd won one tournament before this year, one Grand Slam if I'm not mistaken. And he'd also have a tough time competing against Nadal and Federer, the two big guys over the last decade or so. However, he did something this year that catapulted him into the #1 ranking, and he went, I think his record as of this year, as of right now, is like 70 wins and 2 losses. It's something ridiculous. He went undefeated for like 50 games in a row, and it was huge. It was like one of the best runs ever in men's tennis history. It was incredible. He just was playing on top of the world, had so much confidence, and news started coming out as to what he was doing differently. Well, what he did, and I'm not saying this necessarily made him #1 in the world, but what he did was he went gluten-free. And he admittedly said that going gluten-free, so essentially not eating breads and wheat and pasta and stuff like that, allowed him to really take his game and his fitness level to a whole new level. See, before this, Djokovic always struggled with long games. He'd always have breathing issues, and his physical endurance was always what let him down in 5-set matches and in heats and stuff like that. This year, none of that really existed. He was a lot fitter. He didn't see the breathing problems, and he attributed a lot of that to the fact that he was gluten-free. So he felt that he recovered faster, he performed better, he was more mentally clear, and these are all really important facets of any athletic endeavor. Now, whether you're a tennis player or an athlete or not, doesn't matter. The principle that I want to share with you today can apply to anyone, and that's the power of removing or minimizing gluten from your diet. So why is gluten a problem? Well, gluten is a problem because if you think about the name, right? So think about gluten. What's the first 3 letters in that? Glu, right? So gluten is a protein found in wheat and other grains that contain gluten. So they would be the predominant grains that we find in a lot of whole grains, right? Whole grain cereals, whole grain breads. Doesn't really matter, what they are, unless they're a non-glutinous grain like quinoa, amaranth, buckwheat, millet. Pretty much there's 4 or 5 grains that don't contain gluten. We call those pseudo grains. The other grains, barley, wheat, oats, a lot of those contain gluten, and they're very problematic I'm going to talk about 2 main problems. The first one is from a digestive standpoint. So if you think about it, gluten is a protein, and if we think about gluten, when you eat wheat, pasta, bread, what happens is it essentially ends up forming a gluey-like film coating the inside of your intestines, and that inhibits proper absorption of nutrients into your bloodstream, and that's not a good thing. The second thing it does is it causes irritation at the epithelial cells within your intestines. So it causes these, what you normally have as normal pores that allow certain nutrients to come into the blood. Gluten ends up irritating those pores and causing inflammation, which causes them to grow in size. And this can lead to something you may have heard of called leaky gut syndrome. So gluten is very problematic from that standpoint. Now, let's say you've, like most of us, right, you've been exposed to bread your entire life, or pasta, or wheat of some form. Also wheat is actually found in a lot of products that we don't even think about. If you look at the food label of many processed foods, it will contain wheat or gluten of some form in there. So at a more systematic level, the big problem with gluten is that if it gets into the blood, when it does, and in most cases it does, it causes inflammation. It releases a whole cascade of events like cytokines and other inflammatory molecules and processes, and that is the biggest problem with gluten from a systemic and long-term perspective. And when we're talking about an athlete like Novak Djokovic, systemic inflammation is detrimental to repair and recovery, performance, health, breathing issues, right? All of these things are synonymous with inflammation in the body. So the idea is, from a general health standpoint, the goal is to reduce inflammation in your body. And that's one of the reasons, for instance, that omega-3s, fish oils, are so powerful, because they have powerful anti-inflammatory, or they create powerful anti-inflammatory prostaglandins in the blood. And that's why it's one of the biggest reasons why we should all be taking fish oils or omega-3s, supplementing with them. Because what we want to do is remove and reduce inflammation in our body, because inflammation is correlated with every single disease process we know of. And that's one of the reasons that if you're eating wheat and gluten on a daily basis, on a yearly basis, if you've eaten it for a long time, I mean, I basically grew up on bread. That's all I ate, breads and cereals and pastas for most of my early life, up until I was about 20. And as a result, I developed an autoimmune condition, because that bombardment of my immune system from these big gluten protein molecules in the blood led to a whole cascade of events. So I'm not saying that you're going to develop an autoimmune condition. Everyone responds differently, but the goal is that we want to reduce inflammation in the body, and that was a big help for Novak Djokovic. So 10.6 million diet trick. Well, the reason I say $10.6 million is because he earned $10.6 million this year alone, just simply by, obviously not just because he went gluten-free, but gluten-free was a big catalyst in his improvement. So will you make $10.6 million by going gluten-free? I don't know. Probably not. There's no cause and effect there. But the idea is that you'll be a lot better off if you reduce and remove gluten from your diet. And there are real simple ways to do this. I mean, if you can remove, just try it for a couple days. If you can remove, wheat, so we're talking about breads, pastas, cereals, if you can remove them from your diet, let's say for 4 days, okay, just see how you feel. You'll find that you lose weight almost instantaneously, because a lot of times those inflammation processes are storing water, as well as the fact that carbohydrates in those refined forms store or hold on to water inside your body. So you'll find that you lose maybe 5 to 10 pounds almost within 4 days. So that can be a good thing, but again, if you reintroduce those afterwards, you'll gain that weight back most likely. So the more important thing is to notice how you feel, right? How does your skin look? Sinuses, do they kind of clear up? If you have breathing issues, does that kind of go away? So really important to kind of check in with yourself and see, if I remove this, do I feel better? Because if you do, that's an indication that if you reintroduce that food and those symptoms come back, then that's an indication that that's probably not a food you want to have in your body too often. So yeah, so a lot of people ask me, okay, Yuri, well, if you don't eat wheat, I'd be lying to you if I said I don't eat bread, because I do. I just don't bring it in the house, okay? So if I have bread, it's really at a restaurant, and that's, again, because I enjoy nice bread, but I indulge every now and then when I go for a bite to eat, okay? But we don't have it in the house, because I know if it's sitting in there, it's gonna get eaten. So the same thing with you. If you've got bread and cereals and pastas and stuff, try to get rid of them. And I'm gonna give you some good options that will be a good substitute. So if you wanna go from bread, if you wanna continue eating bread, go with a sprouted grain bread, like Ezekiel 419. The sprouted grain, it minimizes gluten's impact digestively, although some people say that it might still cause systemic issues from an inflammatory perspective, so that's up to you. Pasta-wise, go away from the white, even the brown rice, the brown whole wheat pasta. Move to a rice pasta, and actually the rice pasta, it doesn't even taste that different. It's actually really good. So you can move to like a brown rice noodle, which is excellent, and it's gluten-free. And cereal-wise, you don't really need cereal, okay? Like I don't know why we've been marketed and indoctrinated that we believe we need cereal, because whatever, all these commercials we see. If you want a great cereal, just grab some blueberries, and I'm sure I've put up a video on YouTube about this. Blueberries, walnuts, coconut, just some really good stuff without the grains. It'll really make a big difference. And I just actually got back in from the gym, did some sprints this morning, and I'm having my little liter of smoothie action here. So like my video yesterday, I'm going to share another great smoothie recipe with you, which again is obviously gluten-free. So if you have a pen, you want to write this down, because this is really, really good. So I've got 2 bananas in here. So this made probably about 1.5 liters. So I've got 1 liter. Amy's got about 500 mils upstairs. So we got 2 bananas in here. Probably about 2 cups of frozen wild blueberries. You can use any kind of blueberries you want. About a cup of frozen strawberries. What else we have in there? 2 tablespoons or so of hemp seeds, right? So good source of protein and omega-3s. I've got a scoop of Sun Warrior protein. Right? I'm not a huge fan of protein powders, but Sun Warrior is awesome. It's vegan, all this good stuff. So I'll just put a scoop in every now and then. What else? Yeah, I think that's it. So we got 2 bananas, 2 cups of blueberries, 1 cup of strawberries, 2 tablespoons of hemp seeds, a scoop of Sun Warrior protein, which is optional. And then we've got, it's about half almond milk and water. So maybe about 2 cups almond milk, 2 cups water, depending on how thick you like it. And actually, sorry, I forgot, 2 tablespoons of peanut butter. Again, if you can get raw organic peanut butter, that'd be great. If not, just go with a good quality peanut butter. And it's awesome, right? Great post-workout. I mean, there's actually a lot of protein in this as well as carbohydrates, so it's perfect for post-workout or pre-workout, doesn't really matter. And there it is. So enjoy that smoothie, give it a shot, and remember, if you can remove gluten from your diet, just try it out for 4 days. This is my challenge to you this week. Remove it from your diet for 4 days, and if you need help with that, if you don't know what to eat or you need some recipes and stuff, then I'd highly recommend you check out my Eating for Energy program, because in that Eating for Energy program, I actually give you 120 recipes that do not involve wheat or gluten at all. So they're raw-based recipes that take less than 10 minutes to prepare. Things like this that are actually amazing and will blow you away about how simple they are to prepare and how good they taste. So the website is right here, eatingforenergy.ca. Check it out, grab a copy. I guarantee it'll change your life within a couple days, like really as fast as that. And we'll see you in the next video.